Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you a really easy way to get a multicolor rainbow glitter effect with only using a vinyl wrap and opal glitters. We're starting out with two prepped tumblers from the Still Magnolia. I love that they offer this option, and I always forget that these are on the website, but it really saves me so much time in sanding or using my Artistry mattify to prep my tumblers and spray paint them. I always leave a little bit of that stainless showing at the top of my tumbler so that I get a really nice seal with my epoxy. So I'm just going to take a piece of sandpaper and sand that down just enough to where my stainless will be exposed with my final product. I'm going to wipe that off with a wet cloth and then grab my two clear vinyl wraps from Gracefully Created. Now these are cut perfectly for a 20 to 24 ounce tumbler. However, we are going to be using these on this 32 ounce plump, and then we're going to use a chunky glitter to waterfall or ombre from the top and the bottom rims to cover up the edges of our vinyl. So we just cut off a little bit of the back so that once I have it lined up perfectly, I can press that exposed sticky portion of vinyl down. And then I'm going to grab my new ruler slash squeegee combo to press this vinyl down as I am removing the backing, working my way around the tumbler. Thank you so much, Brandy, for sending this to me. I can't wait to keep using it. It is amazing. Once I've made my way around the tumbler, I'm just going to take my craft knife and cut straight down the seam where the start and the finish meets of our vinyl. Remove the excess from over top and underneath, and then press that down really well. After I make sure I don't see any bubbles underneath, which it definitely did not using that extra large squeegee tool, I'm going to go right into adding on this next clear cast. Alright, so once we have our wraps on, I'm going to go in with two of my COLORFLEX Color Fix paints, just enough to kind of tone down the harsh line in between the white and the wrap, so that once we add on our glitter on top, it's not going to be visible. The first color I'm using is Steel Gray. I'm going to be using a silver mix glitter on this one, so we're just going to go over it with two really thin coats, trying to blend it just a tad into our wrap. It doesn't have to be perfect because once again it is going to be covered with a high quality glitter. We just want to eliminate a super harsh line so that you can't see that through the ombre portion of our glitter where it starts to fade a little bit. We're using sort of a vintage gold on this one, so we're going in with cinnamon donut and just repeating those same steps, doing 2 really thin coats around the top and the bottom rims and just slightly fading it, not perfect, into our wrap. I'm going to use the epoxy method to apply our glitter. So I am going to take about 1.5 to 2 milliliters of epoxy. We are using the ARTISTRY 1:1 ratio fast set, and just coat this tumbler as thinly as possible. When you are using epoxy for glitter application, you want to get it so thin that it's almost difficult to move around on your tumbler. Make sure that you're not using your epoxy after it has begun to set up, because it can be more difficult to move that around your tumbler. Once you've finished application, then go around and just dab the whole tumbler with your hand to give epoxy some texture and remove any of the streaks that might be on there, and it will help give you a really nice even glitter coverage. The first glitter that we are using is a silver custom mix from COLORFLEX. This is New Dawn, and I'm going to go around the top and the bottom rims really heavy, and then tilt my tumbler at an angle and allow that glitter to fall towards the center of the tumbler. When you are using a wrap like this that might have a very visible seam line, you want to try to keep in mind or plan out what kind of decal that you are going to use. So if you're going to use a decal that goes straight up and down, such as like a name or a small phrase you can make large enough to cover that seam up, you don't want to have too much concern on bringing this glitter more towards the center to cover that seam up. But then in this case, I am going to use probably about 3.5 to 4 inch decal. So I want to blend my glitter into the opal that we're going to use just enough to leave about a 4-inch solid gap of that rainbow. Now I did stop recording the ombre on this one. However, I did go back and add a little bit more of that New Dawn just so that we have a smaller gap in the middle and we can cover the remaining parts of our seam up with our decal. The second glitter we are using is Golden Hour, also from COLORFLEX. Now this one has less of the fine cuts of glitter in it, so I did do this one a little bit slower and spend some extra time on making sure I had glitter coverage in all areas. If you're wanting some really excellent coverage with a chunky mix glitter, it's good to pick the ones that have some fine particles in there to kind of serve as fillers to the areas that those chunky bits don't cover. So if you find yourself using a chunky glitter or a chunky mix and it's not covering all areas that you want it to on your tumbler, then just grab a fine glitter that matches. My favorites are the 0.015 cuts, and then just go over the chunky with your fine glitter. Now the opals that we are using are from PDB Creative Studio. Alter Ego has a beautiful rainbow shift, so we used that in combination with our New Dawn from COLORFLEX, and that was a perfect combination. And since we used a gold glitter on the top and bottom of this one, I grabbed FIREFLY, which has a gold shift to it. FIREFLY is a PDB Creative Studio fan favorite, And there are 3 different cuts in this, and you do need all 3 in your collection. It's a absolutely beautiful glitter. I have used it so many times on different projects. Once we have both of these tumblers complete, we are going to roll them up in some printer paper to flatten out that glitter so we can minimize the amount of epoxy we have to coat on top. Now, a business logo is going to go on both of these tumblers, so I did not show that application process. But before we were decal ready, I did allow these to dry and then sealed them twice with a Rust-Oleum matte clear coat or Color Shot matte clear sealer. I gave them 2 coats of epoxy and then sanded them so everything was nice and smooth. I added on my decal directly over the exposed part of the seam, covering that up very nicely. I used the print to cut feature in Cricut Design Space to print and cut the company logo on Buttercraft printable vinyl, which is my absolute favorite, and I created a 0.045 offset using Tech Wrap Craft textured vinyl. After 2 coats of epoxy, these were complete. I love how these turned out, especially since I was able to use some opal glitter over top of a very colorful surface. It's one of my favorite things to do. And in between recording this tutorial, I did use these to record an epoxy tips and tricks tutorial as well. So make sure that you are subscribed to our channel, especially if you are needing help with your epoxy brand that you're currently using. The tips and tricks that I go over, an application that I show you will work for any of your epoxy brands. And of course, feature the ARTISTRY 1:1 ratio fast set and regular set epoxy. That tutorial will be up very soon, so make sure you are subscribed and hit the bell in the corner to be notified when that tutorial drops. All materials that I have used in this tutorial will be linked in the description below with some coupon codes for you. That is all for today. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.